Welcome back to Can's Chit Chat. Now, this session, I'm doing a bit of a test for a live stream simulcast. So you will have to bear with me as I have a look at this. And I have to, let's call audience a session. I'm supposed to have simulcast. Anyway, if you are watching via Facebook live group Equity SM or the Facebook page Equity Online branch, Periscope or YouTube live, please do put something in the comments. If you're on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. And we'll get this hour started. If you do come onto screen, we have somebody here. Hi, Zoe. Would you like to come and join me on screen at some point? Do just let me know in the comments. Today is International Stage Management Day. And this particular session, I am kind of talking about Equity Stage Management Committee, how Equity can support stage managers and what's being done. I think these are the things that it's difficult to work out when you're working in the industry. Well, what does Equity ever do for us? We've currently got a stage management committee of 9, of which I am a sort of co-opted associate at the moment, because although I attempted to stand for committee, Equity is still quite traditional, and my digital stage management stuff that I did caused a little bit of confusion, but luckily the guys still want to keep me around, so here I am. So I'm going to start just showing you a bit of the stuff that Equity has already produced. And the one thing that the Stage Management Committee are really, really proud of is this, the stage management buyout to standard contracts. This has been produced by the last serving Stage Management Committee, but they are still the same. And we've got 2 newbies joining the group, to which bringing that experience from outside of the Equity bubble is really, really welcome. Members who have been looking in for a while and really thought, I'd like to support that, I'd like to have my say. And they stood for election and they are here, and that is Alex and Will. So what does this have in it? This has, the term buyout is often used as a catch-all phrase for any contract where you are offered a fixed sum, either weekly or overall, which is intended to include any extra payments like overtime. However, not all buyouts are equal, and they can vary widely from one producer to the next. How can you tell whether an employer is offering you a fair deal, and what can you do to protect yourself both before and after accepting a job? I think during the research for this, one thing that we all discovered by talking to each other is that firm understanding that you can only be bought out of an Equity contract. So the company you're working for must be a member of Theatre UK, what was the TMA, Independent Theatre Council, the ITC, or the commercial contract, and SALT, the Society of London Theatres. If your contract is not one of those, and it's not been negotiated with Equity beforehand, it's not an Equity contract, and therefore you can't be bought out of it. You can be offered a contract that isn't Equity, and it could have parity with it. But when we talk about buyouts, especially within the industry, we are talking about being bought out of an Equity contract. So there's all sorts of information to be able to use this. And there's also a bit there to help you work out hourly rates and all the things that go around it. But I think one thing that we never quite realise is the intricacies of what makes up a contract. It's not just your hourly rate, it's all the rules that are tied up with that as well. So, you know, how many hours you're allowed to work, how many breaks you're supposed to have. And there are calculations and penalty clauses for managers who don't follow those rules. And if you are bought out of that, quite often you are being bought out of all of those just little intricate little bits that if they push you on overtime, all of a sudden those overtime payments look very attractive. And there's usually a reason why a management wants to buy you out. Either the payroll is very complex, and that's one of the reasons why employers like to, or perhaps might offer you a buyout. But the other one is that they know that if they don't work to the rules, their payroll bill will go up astronomically, and especially for stage managers. For actors, you have a scheduled week and you have rehearsals, so you can have a very controlled schedule to make sure your hours are stayed within the limit for actors. But stage managers, of course, we tend to work a lot longer hours. We are there before the company arrives, and we often stay around an hour or 2 hours whilst everybody's left. And then during performance, we often have reset times. We have reset times and then times when we're managing the company. So those hours, I have come across very, very regularly stage managers who would not flinch at telling you that they work 55, 65, 75, even 85 hours a week, especially during production, and sometimes on tours where the time between travelling and the lengths of get-ins, you can find yourself actually on a buyout contract that's not paying you much more than £50 or £60 overtime on a working week. So this is a really interesting booklet to have a look at. We've got the fringe contract, so you could be bought out of that. There's the Independent Theatre Council contract, you could be bought out of that. There's the Commercial Theatre contract, you could be bought out of that. There's the West End contract and the Subsidised Theatre contract. Now, it's really good to be aware of these contracts, and each one has different rules that are assigned to it. It can become very complicated. So if you are new to the industry, do have a look at your local theatres and what different contracts are being offered. Have a look at resources like this. Really, really useful. So with a bit about that, I'm just going to have a check. So Zoe, really great to have you on stream. I would love to have a chat to you. I will invite you on screen. Don't accept if you don't feel that you want to, but it would be lovely to find out who you are and a little bit about why you're watching the live stream. So I think being as this is about equity and stage management this time, I'm just going to share with you another resource that Equity has brought out, which is the audio work. Maybe not necessarily relevant for traditional stage managers, but I know for myself, having transitioned into a lot of digital work, being aware of podcasting rates and how the new industries, the new social technologies and the new media industries are impacting our work, I think is a really important thing to have a look at. So this is the audio work booklet. Again, another one that I think is actually quite relevant, or really relevant, and that is The Right to Rest. This is a booklet that's been developed by the Dance Committee, and your right to holiday pay and how to calculate it. And I think working in the industry, there is a line that gets blurred between what we love doing and what we get paid to do. And as employees, we are entitled to our holiday pay, and it is part of the working time directive. A lovely bit at the back here about myth busting. So performers on a short-term contract are not entitled to holiday pay. Only permanent employees get this, right? And that is false. You are entitled to holiday pay as long as you are defined as a worker. It doesn't matter how long you are contracted for. So that could go for a stage management contract. If you're working as a stage manager for a short-term contract, you should really be looking at including holiday pay within your fee. And there is a little calculator in here of how you can do that. Myth number 2. I pay tax, national insurance on a self-employed basis. This means I'm not entitled to holiday pay. Again, this is incorrect. Performers and stage managers are given a special tax status by HMRC, but this doesn't affect your right to be defined as a worker and to receive holiday pay. So the tax and national insurance status does change slightly for performers. And over the years, stage managers have been included in that bracketed group of performers. And there are various aspects to our contracts that do take advantage of our association with the entertainment industry. And a lot of contracts are interwoven with this tax status. It's a really useful thing to be self-employed for tax purposes, because it means you can claim your travel. It means you can claim your expenses. Anything that you are using that's explicitly for the business of stage management, you can claim as a tax expense. So the stage newspaper, you can claim that. Any books that you buy or any resources that you sign up to that you would not be using if it wasn't for the fact you are a stage manager, you must check with your accountant, but there is a good chance that you can claim that. You can also, if you're using your house as an office, there's a percentage of your work done at home that you can claim a percentage of your electric, your gas, your rent, if you have got a dedicated room in the house that you actually use for your admin work when you're not working out on tour or in a venue. So that's also a really useful thing to know. Myth number 3. My employer is allowed to include holiday pay in my fee. This is only allowed if you are assigned holiday within a contract without having your fee reduced, or it's clearly and separately stated in your holiday pay is within your fee. That sounds very complicated. So this is only allowed if you are assigned holiday within a contract without having your fee reduced, or it's clearly and separately stated what your holiday pay is within your fee. Otherwise, this practice is known as rolling up holiday pay, and it's illegal. So the work that Equity do in terms of contractual agreement and responsibility of our employer is really important for us to be able to stay in tune with our industry. Just had a note come up on screen. Hi Zoe. Hello, I'm a friend of Lucy. Lucy came to the stream earlier. Hello Zoe, who I think you spoke to this morning. I'm currently a student looking to pursue a career in stage management in the future and currently doing a research project on stage management as a career plan. Cool. Well, if you've got any questions, do stick them in the comments and I'll see if I can pick them up. There's a lot of the stage management committee at the moment who are working right at the stage front, or coalface as they often say, right on stage across lots of disciplines in theatre. And any questions that you send to @EquitySM tend to get picked up by the Stage Management Committee. There's also the Facebook group, Stage Management Meet Equity, that is also monitored by members of the Stage Management Committee. So if you've got any questions, it's always useful to put them in there. And also, if you had a research survey that you set up on SurveyMonkey or something, it's always worth dropping the link to that survey into the link, into the chat, so that people can maybe fill that in for you if you wanted. So yeah, I see you don't want to come on screen, that's fine. Stage management types tend to be quite shy, or at least stay away from the camera. Shy and forceful aren't necessarily the same things when it comes to stage management. We tend to have to be quite resolute with the people that we deal with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we want to come on camera all the time. So that's fine. But yeah, research projects in terms of further education and the resources that are going in to understand what stage management is a big, happens a lot now. I think I looked and read through books all the way through my training, but the academic papers I didn't think were being written until right now. So it's really interesting that you're looking at stage management as a career, but also in your training, really doing some research into what it is and what it means. So I'd be really interested to know what kinds of questions interest you. So do put those in. I'm going to finish off with myth 4. My employer doesn't use an equity contract. This means I'm not entitled to holiday pay. This is not true. A worker's right to holiday pay is set in law and not as an optional extra. So equity contracts are really useful and have been created in negotiation with good employers. And I think having a sense of what is in an equity contract, even if you aren't offered one, there's nothing stopping you basing your ethical standpoint about how you expect to be treated based on what the industry contract is for the venue that you're working on. So this kind of thing is really useful. Contracts, the stage management buyout guide is a really good one to kind of, how many hours do people work and what do they get paid, and some of those questions. I think this would be very useful. Okay, contracts. I think if you're not offered a contract, what can you do? Well, here again, equity for 2017, which is the year of variety performers cover the entire spectrum of performance. They have to do their get-ins, they have to do their technicals, they have to look after their instruments, they have to rehearse themselves, they have to do their admin. So there's a lot of work that they do, and having decent contracts is often something that they don't get access to a lot. So the variety sector of equity have produced this Your Guide to Contracts, advice for equity members for one-off performances of your act. But it doesn't matter if you're not an act. If you're wanting to do a one-off project and you want a background or a foundation for the contract you might want to offer, this is a really useful booklet to have a look through, because again, it gives you some insight about what the guide is about. But at the back, there's actually a confirmation contract template that you can copy to give you some guidelines. There's a basic booking form. There's combined booking form for terms and conditions. So again, really useful. And although a lot of the things in here are probably directly related to variety, I think with a bit of clever reading, you can probably see how this relates to stage management. There's a national standard contract template in here, and then there's a known as act contract. So one-off performers. So if you're solo stage managing, you might want to look at the protections that are offered in some of these. So that is also something that's really good to look at. Well, that's our introduction to some of the great things that equity have to offer. Because I'm teching and running the live stream and finding the links, I am going to go and find some links to drop in the chat for these documents. I have them on my website, which is currently pcmcreative.com, and I have a page called Equity UK, which does mean I can take the right to rest I can copy the link. So here's the right to rest. There we go. There's the right to rest link for booklet. You might find that interesting for your research. Oh, I'll copy this link. I will also, this is the new members guide for equity. So I will call that Equity New Members Guide. That's definitely worth a read if you want to understand what equity is and what benefits it can give. I want the audio one. I will drop that in. So this is the to audio work. And of course, the one that is missing off that page, but isn't missing off the stage management page, is the buyout guide. And this is the stage management buyout guide. There we go. So, Zoe, do you have any questions? Whilst you're thinking, aha, how do you go about getting a job in stage management? Is it all about gaining experience in networking? It's not all about experience in networking, but that will help you as your career builds momentum. You have to start somewhere. So starting somewhere is deciding what it is about stage management that you want to start with. So if you're living in a city, you might have access to local small theatres that are always doing amateur work, and they will need stage management. You may then look at larger theatres, like I'm based near Nottingham, so Nottingham Theatre Royal is what they call a #1 theatre tour, and #1 touring theatres are of a particular size. So the Wakefield Opera House is 1, and the Theatre Royal in Nottingham is 1. I'm going to be shocking and not be able to remember any more. Where did I tour? But they are our #1 touring houses. It's really shocking, but they are of a size. And you've then got subsidised theatres like the Theatre Playhouse that have seasonal work. So they will have shows that take place over a seasonal period, and then they will break for a summer, or they'll have other visiting work at certain times, and they will have work that's produced in-house. The #1 touring venues tend to have regular shows coming in once a week. So if you were going to be looking at a theatre that had shows coming in once a week, the crew that run those venues tend to be a stage manager in much more caretaker roles or custody roles, where they are looking after the receiving companies. So it's the companies that are visiting those venues that you might want to take an interest in. Those are commercial venues, commercial tours. So picking up the programs and seeing who the management company is. So where, as I say, rather than me go on about that, do you want to put in the comments the kind of theatre that you would like to do? Are you interested in small community work with theatre, or are you interested in residential theatre companies like Nottingham Playhouse? Or are you interested in the bigger musical tours that are going from venue to venue? Do you want to stay living in one place, or do you want to tour around a lot? So there's all those kind of things to think about. Put any little bits of there in the comments. In terms of experience and networking, I spent a lot of time before I had any experience and didn't really understand networking in the business sense, because most people who are working in the industry are constantly working. So networking opportunities to meet people at like careers fairs and things like that aren't going to be that prevalent. I did do a lot of writing to theatres that I really wanted to work for. I worked out what their schedules were, so how often they produced, and I made sure that I sent CVs to the production manager, whose name I discovered, and made sure that I was sending my CV at a time when I thought it might be going across their desk, at a time when they might be starting to consider looking for new employees. I think my eventual aim is to be based in Manchester, close to my hometown Bolton. However, I would like the opportunity to tour with musical theatre companies. That does interest you. Sorry about shockingly reading out your comment, but I get the gist. Manchester has festivals going on all the time, so finding out the main events that are taking place in the city centre and finding out which organisations run those, that's something that would be very interesting to find out who's running those. In terms of the venues, there's the Royal Exchange, there's Home, and there's 3 or 4 other venues. So again, one of the things, finding the web page of those websites, of those theatres, and looking at the bottom piece of the website where you will often see technical company, you'll often see the link to current jobs. You might not necessarily always see it in the top navigation. You may have to look in the footer of the web pages to see those links to the technical and business side. There tends to be a list of who the project manager is, who the production manager is. So it is worth having a look and finding out those names. When you find out somebody like that, you've then got things like LinkedIn. See if they're on LinkedIn, see if they're on Twitter, see if they've got Facebook pages, or see if they've got Facebook profiles that some of your friends might already know. Or have a look at people who you know you're working with who might have bigger networks that can make introductions for you. So Manchester is a big theatre centre, so there's a lot of opportunities, but some of those opportunities are about mapping what's available to start with, and then start finding out who is in those venues, when do they employ. On the websites, finding out whether they've actually got a job area, and then making sure you're signed up with that, making sure you're signed up to notifications so that notifications come through to your email when the time comes that they are looking for employees. So I'm just going to do a search for Manchester theatres. So even just looking basically in Google, manchestertheatres.com is a company in itself. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to do one of my testing of, I am going to do a bit of a screen share where I can then show you the kind of things that I'm looking around at. So this was a search for Manchester theatres, and looking at this, all of the theatres in Manchester seem to be coming under one umbrella. So you've got everything here from the Palace Theatre, the Opera House, the Lowry, Manchester Arena, the Apollo, Wateridge Hall. I can't even go through reading all of those, but they are all theatres that have come together to promote themselves through this website. So at the moment, it looks like there's shows in Manchester. So these are going to be shows that are coming to Manchester. So Miss Saigon is a big national tour. That's going to the Palace. Matilda, that's going to be going to the Palace. This looks as of Mice and Men, which is a play, going to the Opera House. And there's a few other things. There's a couple there for the Lowry. Warhorse, big national theatre tour that's on its way round at the moment. That's going to the Lowry. So if you were interested in musicals, the Palace Theatre is going to be the venue that has the technical infrastructure. So crewing to get some experience, finding out if they've got a crew list. I don't know how full those crew lists are anymore, but finding out how you would get some crewing experience. Some of them have youth theatres as well, so supporting the youth theatre or finding out who runs the educational programmes within venues is very useful. So let's take a look at, now we'll take a look at Home Manchester, because I know that Jamie Byron is the company manager there at the moment and is one of the members of the Stage Management Committee. So if you were to look at this website and you were to have a look at how you might contact, you would look all the way down. I'm still going down. I'm still going down. Okay, we go down further. Okay, we get the little bits at the bottom. So if I look at the bottom here, Manchester hotels, Liverpool, theatre guides. Okay, so in which case you would need to go to the Manchester Home's actual site, which doesn't look linked from there. So I'm going to take Manchester Home, and I'm actually going to put that in a search of its own. Okay, so Manchester Home. So here we have the site for Manchester Home, and as you can see, it's much more stripped down than that singing and dancing audience focused site. And here we're getting more into an audience's website. Looking down here, events. They have a digital channel, about, okay, membership and support, becoming a member, but you actually want to be, wow, press, privacy, huh, interesting. Okay, so I'm going to go to about, and okay, the top bar now changes. I don't think that was there before. So from the site, no, it wasn't. So if you go to about, it gives you, and lots of websites will work the same as this. It won't be until you visit the about page, if that's where you need to go, that it will reveal another navigation. So here, all of a sudden, we do have jobs and opportunities. So there will be that one, but initially I'm interested to see if we can track down any members of staff who you might have contacted. So that's basic press. Let's have a look at the team. One of the things about the Stage Management Day is about raising awareness of stage managers in their venues. And for people who want to get into the industry, how do you get into the industry if you can't track down the people who might give you some guidance into how to get into the industry? And this is a perfect example of how do you get to the right people. So I think the team is just the home team, the board of trustees. Okay, artistic team. There is a technical. So, okay, so we're looking to see if we can track Jamie down. Let's see, stage management, not necessarily artistic team, but we've got the artistic directors. Again, much more production. We're in the right area, but it's not technical team. So let's have a look to see what they've got in their technical bit. Technical. So here we go. Okay, so it's taken a little bit of tracking down, but in the about and in the technical, thank you for this question, Zoe. I think this is really, really useful. I think this is one of the things to get into the industry. You've got to know how to find the people to contact to start networking. Experience comes from working in the industry, but to kickstart your networking process, how do you do that? So here we've got technical. We've got Jamie Byron's the company stage manager, the deputy technical manager. But again, these are all names. They don't have any links to them. So once you've found someone who you think you might want to be in touch with, you might want to take the name and the job title and do a further search in Google for that person. And then you can start to track them down in terms of what's their experience. Do you have anybody else who already knows that person? Because that's the interesting thing about LinkedIn. If you develop a LinkedIn profile, you can see who has been employed by people, and they're often tracked through that. So I'm not going to put Jamie's details into the stream. That's a way of getting to a company manager. It was interesting to be able to see if I could get to that point. But there is, Jamie did work for the Library Theatre, and this is his interview. So let's just have a look at this.
Quite a lot actually, and it's mainly dealing with people, organising stuff, organising the entire production, working with other departments, making sure they're up to date with what's going on in rehearsals. So basically, the stage manager is kind of like overseeing all of that, with the deputy stage manager in rehearsals, watching progress rehearsals, and reporting on any information that comes out of rehearsals. And then the assistant stage manager can help the stage manager to collate all the furniture and props that you would need for a show. And that's our main objective, whereas other departments obviously do most of acting, sound, etc. We will keep in touch with them and make sure that they have the information they need for the the production to come. So all the information that comes out of rehearsals is collated by the stage management department, passed on, and then in the course of the run of the show, the stage management will look after all aspects of the show, making sure that they are repeated night after night in the same fashion, and making sure that the actors are aware of what's going on and that they're happy. So it's a lot of ego rubbing as well. Just coming to it as I have, I'm just finishing off with the designer the last few bits and pieces of props that are needed for the show. I haven't seen any of the production yet, so that's to come. And then I will be working directly on the show in terms of making sure that it runs smoothly. I'm the only member of stage management around at the moment, so this is my only project at the moment, as it were. But I'm just making props, and I'm making sure the props that I have already sent in today are appropriate. And I'm checking with the director to make sure that they are. And then hopefully everything will be on course by the end of tomorrow. And then on Monday I'll be able to see them through and see how the progress of the actual show itself before I have to cue it at the end of next week.
Okay. Does that explain some of the bits and pieces, Joe? Zoe, is that giving you some insight? Was that useful? So thank you for that question, Zoe. That was really, yeah, thank you. I hope it was useful. I think it's also interesting for me to see how possible it was to find somebody. And that's the process, really. That's the process of, if there's a venue that you want to work in, just try and track them down. And if you can't find them, call Stage Door. Probably not admin the best, but you should be able to find a Stage Door number, or visit Stage Door, drop in there, say hello, explain to them that you're doing some research and you'd like to get in touch with the stage manager or who hires the staff, and get in touch with them that way. Well, it was great to find Jamie's video. I'll have to tweet that out. In fact, I will put a link. Oh, no. I want share link. That's the one.
A big part of stage management.
YouTube running away with itself. Okay. Back on the screen so that I can at least see all those things. So, YouTube video. Jamie Myron. yeah, that's I've got 10 minutes left, 15 minutes. I think that was a really good process. I'm going to see if I can get to some other contacts that might be useful. Okay, we'll stick with Manchester because Manchester is where it's relevant for you, Zoe. Let me just have a check on the stream. Okay, welcome, Jimmy. I see you're in the chat again from this morning. Thank you for joining us earlier. I'm going to share my screen again. We'll go to the entire screen this time, and that there should. There we go. So I'm going to go back to Manchester theatres. But this time there's theatres, but there's also, let's have a look. Let's see what's on stage. Let's track something that's not quite as mainstream. Let's have a look at thinking sort of festivals, plays, so pantomime, music. Pantomime. This might be interesting because if you are starting your career, because they have pantos every year and there's quite large companies and a large stage management contingent that's often needed for pantomime. Pantomime is a really good way at the beginning of your career to get some experience, whether it's crewing, because they need a lot of crew to move props around and set around and push things around on stage, make sure things are in the right place. So panto is a really good place to get started. So in Manchester, there's Cinderella, Dick Whittington and Home have got a Christmas show. So if you were interested in the Home theatre in itself, you might want to get in touch with Jamie, tell him that you're doing some research, ask him if they have a crew list or how you could go about getting some experience and find out if there are any routes in. Now, stage managers are very busy, so they might not be able to respond to you immediately, but it is worth following up maybe 3 or 4 times over the period of 2 months. I think that would be a good window. And then we've got the Opera House doing Dick Whittington. Now, I think the Opera House is probably going to be receiving venue, yes. And they've got lots of shows coming in all the time. So they will have a crew roster of people who will do follow spotting, people who will operate backstage queues, page doors, all that sort of thing. And so where would I start here? So here we've got we've got a website for the actual venue. So we're narrowing into the venue itself. Again, shows, venue, membership, access, all very audience orientated. Let's have a look at the bottom. About us, we've got creative learning, we have jobs. I'm going to again have a look. Well, let's see if there's any panto jobs there. So we didn't actually have a look at the jobs page on Home, but Home did also have a jobs page. Recruitment, vacancy search, so the Ambassador Theatre Group. Now, Ambassador Theatre Group own theatres all over the UK. So if you don't mind going to different venues, it might actually be worth finding out a bit about Ambassador Theatre Group, and they might have something on their site as well. But I'm going to stick with the Manchester. In fact, ATG is their tickets site, so they are running their recruitment within their tickets platform. Keywords, stage manager, search jobs. So they've got no current stage manager jobs. Let's just see if the stage generally comes up with anything. Okay. So they have, in their Glasgow venue, they're advertising for casual stage technicians. Pantomime merchandising team. Now, if you really want to work backstage, I think it is prudent to focus your experience on the area of theatre that you want to work in, rather than getting sidelined. If you need the money, doing some front of house stuff might be useful for some income, but if you're looking to develop your career in your CV, you really want to be looking at relevant jobs to the role that you're ultimately looking to achieve. So casual stage technician, there is only one page there. Okay, so let's have a look at the casual stage technician. Casual stage technician. Glasgow Theatres looking to recruit experienced technicians. It says experienced technicians, but they may have a crew that they're looking to have for follow spot operators or scene shifters. So it would be worth getting in touch with them or starting that process of finding out who is who. But you are kind of in the arena where there's lots of people applying. You want to start to make your networking quite personal. So let's go back to the Opera House and see if we can find a contact that would actually be at the Opera House. So we've got the Opera House and the Palace Theatre. Both venues are receiving houses. That's interesting. So again, we're being taken back to the ambassadors group rather than the Manchester contacts. Okay, ATG. So let's have a look at the see if I can find a contact before we get to 5:55. That's my challenge. Okay. Customer service. I'm thinking this is going to end up. Okay. Manchester Opera House. Okay. House. Manchester. So Opera House, Manchester. What's on guide? It looks like a lot of this is going back to the commercial venue holder. Now, if you are an equity member, one of the useful things is that you do get a diary. Well, let me come back on screen. Hi. Yes, Apollo, Opera and Palace. Now, thanks, Jimmy. Oh, thanks, Zoe. You've had to nip off. If you come back and rewatch this, which is available, but I'm going to close this out with, as it is about equity. Every year, equity do send out an equity diary, and inside the front cover of the diary are all the offices of equity, but you also have all of the stage doors, useful contacts, radio and television studios. I don't know, this is worth your equity membership just for the diary. I've never thought of it this way. You know, all the stage door numbers are in here, and you can phone any stage door. Be polite, obviously, be courteous, but asking who employs their staff. This is probably a really good place to go, because as I've just seen, if you go to the venues themselves, you are seeing the audience facing side of the theatre. And especially when it's a commercial entity like the Opera House, which is a ambassadors group, you don't know. It's very difficult. So that is one way that I would probably start by phoning and either asking stage door who employs, or ask to talk to someone in the stage management department. If they're busy or if they're in production week, you won't get to talk to them anyway. If you do get through, then they're very good at getting rid of you if they're too busy. But it's a way to have a chat to those people. I have 4 minutes. Manchester Opera House. Production manager. Opera House Manchester. Production manager. Aha. Theatre production manager. I have found someone who is a production and events management who was, so I'm seeing their CV. Obviously I'm not on screen now with my screen, but I don't want to expose people's details without their permission. He has a contact us on his page. His details there. He lives in Brighton. He's got his phone number there, his email address. If you wanted to know if he had any advice, if he wanted to have a chat about stage management, that would be a really useful place to start with emails. So that gives me 3 minutes to say thank you very much. If you are watching this stream on replay, it is, in the diary is a really good place. I tell you, the diary has just been given a whole added dimension for me. A lot of equity members think this is pointless, but this is actually quite a good recruiting tool for stage management, because those stage door numbers are really valuable because they don't really appear anywhere. They were in theatre, I can't remember what the name of it is, contacts. Okay, well, that has been really useful for me. I'm going to be back here with probably still a cup of tea because I am at home from 10 till 11 to see if we can get any more international presence on this web stream. So thank you so much for watching. If you've watched the on demand, you can still put comments in the chat. You can contact me on @PCM Creative. You can contact the Stage Management Committee on @EquitySM. You can find their Facebook group, which is Stage Management Meet Equity on Facebook. You can also contact the Equity Online branch, which is also me, @EquityOLB. And of course, Equity's Twitter handle is EquityUK. Thank you so much for watching the live stream, and hopefully I will see some of you later.